stimulus checks of $5,000 for tax-paying Americans. Does it get better than this? I mean, does the Trump thing, the Trump Elon DOGE plan of possibly sending out stimulus checks to Americans, tax-paying Americans, $5,000. This was confirmed yesterday. When I say confirmed, I don't want to say it's actually it's a done deal. But Trump himself, at first it was sort of speculated, it was thrown out there, and then yesterday, Wednesday in Miami, he actually spoke and said that this could be a thing. So let's get into it. I want to talk about it. I want to look at it a little bit. I want to see what James Fishback, who is the investment manager who floated this whole idea, what that's going to look like, and we'll read some of his statements on this. So let's get into the possibility of getting. This is so shocking. This is just. I mean, let's get into it. Time to Talk podcast. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. We're going to talk about it because this is like. On so many levels, there's so many things to say. Let's go first. Let's talk about. Let me look at an article first on MSN where they talk about the idea promoted by the investment manager James Fishback gained significant traction online. Of course it did. After Musk said on X that he checked with President Donald Trump about it. Obviously, the president is the commander in chief, so this is entirely up to him. Musk later added, he's got to keep adding that. It's kind of like that reassurance thing, like, well, you know, here's what we want to do, but of course, it's up to him. He's the president, just as a reminder. Wink, wink. It's kind of what that is. After the initial publication of the story, Trump acknowledged the idea at an event in Florida, saying a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens was under consideration. I literally had a dream about this, Fishback told Business Insider during a Wednesday phone interview about how he and a colleague at his firm came up with the idea. Then we woke up and started working on it and put it on paper over the course of about 2.5 hours. Fishback said that he was meeting with a variety of House and Senate offices in Washington, D.C. this week, and then he emailed the proposal to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. The White House didn't respond to a request for comment. Now, how the DOGE dividend would work. Right now, this is from the MSN article, but I just want to I want to get to this first, and then we'll go to actual Fishback's proposal, which he posted on X. Under the rosiest version of Fishback's proposal, some Americans would receive a one-time $5,000 check in 2026, paid for the savings generated by DOGE. Couple of caveats. For one, Fishback's plan is based on an assumption of a $2 trillion in savings, the goal that was originally set for DOGE. Musk and Trump have since halved that number, telling Sean Hannity in a Tuesday night interview on Fox News that the overall goal is to try to get $1 trillion out of the deficit. Now let's look at how they let's check out his actual plan, right? The case for a DOGE dividend. James Fishback, he's the CEO of Azoria, which is an investment firm. I want to get into it. So he's got how it's going to work, which obviously is important, right? One, DOGE is targeting $2 trillion in total savings. All right. So all these cuts from USAID, all these different programs, all this wasteful spending abroad, and all these different things that USAID has been mostly responsible for. I think that's like number one on the list when you look at the DOGE savings calculator or whatever that is. There's a tracker that's actually available, and it shows what's going on with DOGE and the spending and how much they're cutting. So they're targeting $2 trillion in savings. Take 20% of DOGE's total savings, $400 billion, and return it to the 79 million U.S. households that will be net payers of federal income tax in 2025 as a tax refund check called the DOGE dividend. Oh man, I can just imagine this happening. This is just like. Number three, $400 billion in DOGE-driven savings divided by 79 million tax-paying households, $5,000 DOGE dividend check per tax-paying household. The benefit of President Trump's DOGE dividend, which we explore in more detail below. One, it compensates American taxpayers for the egregious misuse and abuse of their hard-earned tax dollars that DOGE has uncovered. Again, going back to USAID and all the spending here in America and abroad that this agency's got its tentacles in, and how much has been wasteful, how much. Now, there's going to be some pushback on some of this because, there's some hype regarding if you look at the Social Security thing that came out recently where they, Trump and Musk pushed the idea that there were people who were 150 years old still receiving Social Security income checks. And I believe that was more of a computer error in terms of having that data still in the system. This hasn't been 100% debunked yet because it's still kind of floating out there. There are still people who may be receiving that are actually dead, but that was one of the things, right? So all this wasteful spending here in America, the stuff that's going on with USAID, that money they're looking to say, look, the taxpayers are what pay all of that. So we're going to give it back to the taxpayers. On the surface, right there, just hearing that alone, you've got to be saying, oh, well, shit, that makes sense. That's a great idea. Who would possibly be against this? All right, let's go. Number 2, shares the benefits of DOGE's cost savings with American taxpayers, again, incentivizing them to report instances of waste, fraud, and abuse to DOGE, which increases the total amount DOGE saves and increases the size of their DOGE dividend checks. So in other words, the more DOGE saves, the more money the taxpayers get in return. Number 3, President Trump's DOGE dividend works to restore the public trust between taxpayers and their government, making good on his social contract and increasing tax morale. Again, this is... as I read these words, as you listen to this, or if you go and you look on the site and you read this for yourself, very, very, very hard to argue with an idea that an American president comes in, examines taxpayer dollars and where they're being spent, trying to find where wasteful spending has been taking place, trying to reduce our deficit, figure out all sorts of issues when it comes to fiscal policy, both here and abroad, figuring out what we're doing with our taxpayer money and examining this. No one on the surface hearing that could possibly debate that is a bad idea. And plenty of presidents previous to Trump have done this, have looked at and said, you can find Obama, you could find Biden talking about this. You can go way back to the 70s and Jimmy Carter looking at certain things and certain policies, and Reagan. There are tons of presidents, just because, it's a populist view if you think about it. Like, hey, we need to kind of figure out where our tax dollars are going. How much wasteful spending is there? Why is the debt out of control, right? So this just, you can't argue this, right? There's no way to argue it. Now, we can probably have discussions about where should the money actually, if we do save a lot of money, what should we do with it? And that is some of the stuff that's going to come up. We'll talk about that in a second. All right. The conditional nature of the tax refund, available only to payers of federal income tax in 2025, incentivizes labor force participation because only net payers of federal income tax are eligible to receive President Trump's DOGE dividend. Is it President Trump's or Elon Musk DOGE dividend? Let's get into the benefits. So he lists some benefits here. 1, the value of restitution, righting the wrong done to the taxpayer, which who's going to argue with that? While roads and bridges in the American heartland crumbled and countless veterans were denied health care, USAID used taxpayer dollars to feed Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria, finance electric vehicles in Vietnam, and fund sex changes in Guatemala. This is true. This has been identified. These are some of the spending that USAID was doing. Taxation is an implied bilateral contract between taxpayer and government. Taxpayers work hard and pay their taxes. And in exchange, government renders services with accountability, honesty, and fairness. American taxpayers held up their end of the bargain, but as DOGE has exposed, the federal government did not, effectively breaching its implied contract with 75 million tax-paying households throughout the United States. Again, if you read this, you could be one of the yentas on The View and you could just read that out loud and you'd be like, well, that just makes sense. Now let's get back to hating Trump and hating Elon. But reading that and listening to that, you have to be like, well, yes, that's a common sense approach to this, especially as a taxpayer. When a breach of this magnitude happens in the private sector, the counterparty, at minimum, refunds the customer since they failed to deliver what was promised. It's high time for the federal government to do the same and refund money back to taxpayers given what DOGE has uncovered. Again, I got to keep reiterating. Hate DOGE, hate Elon Musk, hate the whole concept. You can't hate the concept. Hate the people with the concept. Again, not an original concept. Something that's been floated plenty of times by other people, other presidents, other administrations, the idea of examining the records and looking at where our money is going. This is not new. Benefit 2, sharing the benefits of cost cutting with the taxpayer. President Trump's DOGE dividend creates a mechanism to cut the taxpayer in on the benefits of spending cuts. By pre-committing to pay out a specified percentage of savings, 20%, taxpayers now benefit directly from spending cuts. With the DOGE dividend, every tax-paying American now stands to benefit from DOGE. As such, they have every incentive to report every instance of government waste, fraud, and abuse that they encounter. This incentive will massively increase the surface area for DOGE to find opportunities to cut costs. Benefit 3, boost tax morale. President Trump's DOGE dividend can work to increase tax receipts by boosting tax morale. Tax morale in political science literature is a measure of taxation sentiment. Whether taxpayers feel they are receiving adequate value in exchange for their tax payments. This is the way it works. Every single time you hit a pothole in your town or the roads are bad after a rough winter, you tend to think, where's my taxpayer dollars going? You think about it. You think about the value of how much you pay in taxes and what you're getting for it. That's what this is about. And if the government's going to be spending money on different programs, both domestically and abroad, funding wars and doing all sorts of wars we have no business being in, another whole subject, you kind of want to know, where is my taxpayer dollars going? That's what this whole sentiment thing about, boost tax morale. Incentivizing 2025 labor force participation. This is benefit number 4. Finally, President Trump's DOGE dividend will work to increase labor force participation by requiring individuals to be net payers of federal income tax to be eligible to receive their DOGE dividend check. The prospect of a $5,000 DOGE dividend in 2026 will incentivize many to re-enter the labor force in 2025 in order to be eligible for the DOGE dividend. Low labor force participation is throttling U.S. economic growth, and the DOGE dividend will provide a powerful incentive to begin reversing this trend on the margins. Now, here's a question. Now, he's got a couple questions here. Wouldn't this be inflationary, right? So this is something he's addressing, whether or not, like, the things that people are going to naturally ask is, like, this is going to create an inflationary situation. And he says no, for 2 important reasons. Number 1, DOGE dividend checks are exclusively funded with DOGE-driven savings, unlike COVID stimulus checks, which were deficit finance. We just printed money and just gave out money to people. I don't know, $9 trillion, whatever it was that we gave out during COVID. DOGE dividend checks are sent only to tax-paying households who have demonstrated propensity to save, not spend the incremental dollar received. The DOGE dividend is different from the past stimulus. Again, the 2021 American Rescue Plan, because only tax-paying households receive it. Tax-paying households are more likely to save, not spend, a transfer payment like the DOGE dividend as consumption in a lower share of their income. Question 2, won't the DOGE dividend increase the deficit? No, for 2 reasons. President Trump's DOGE dividend is contingent on spending cuts. It is truly a tax refund. In the most literal sense, it is financed exclusively via spending cuts. Since Azoria's plan calls for paying out 20% of the savings DOGE identifies with the rest used to pay down the national debt, the value of spending cuts must exceed the value of President Trump's DOGE dividend payouts by a factor of 5. Medium term, President Trump's DOGE dividend can actually drive up tax receipts by increasing tax morale and restoring trust between taxpayers and their governments. So there you have it. I'm all for it. Now, the devil's in the details kind of thing is going to be one of those situations we can analyze this back and forth. I'm trying to figure out, I started taping this a little after 11. So The View, I had to put The View on because I wanted to see, and I put CNN on last night, sometime after Trump had made the comments regarding this in Florida, right? And I wanted to see who on the left, who in the legacy media, the crappy legacy media, like, what are they going to do? Are they going to say this is a bad idea? How do they approach this? How do they talk about this in a way and make it a bad thing? And of course, it really came down to them saying there's no way it could happen. So they didn't do it they had absolutely nothing positive to say. Right? They didn't have anything positive, like, okay, we disagree with Trump, we disagree with the economics of this and Musk, and we don't believe it's fiscally possible or fiscally responsible to do, and let's analyze it. Okay, Anderson, let's switch it over. Like, they didn't do that. They didn't discuss it from a perspective of, well, if you could find wasteful government spending and you can cut it all down, should you give it back to the taxpayer? They didn't discuss it from that perspective. They just discussed it from the idea of, oh, this is bullshit, it's not going to happen. They didn't say bullshit, but you know what I'm saying. They basically made it out to be another pipe dream of Trump's and Musk. And they, again, they analyzed the relationship between Trump and Musk and made it out to be that. They couldn't really talk about this from any other perspective. So I'm all for it, and I got news for you. This is going to make Trump that much more popular. It's going to raise the stakes. It's going to make him more popular, him and Musk. And I'm sorry, whether you're a leftist, extreme blue Democrat who voted for Harris, I wanted to hear you try to cry boo-hoo and say that you don't think if you got a $5,000 check that you're going to complain. I want to see the lies. I want to see the faces of people lying. I want to see you on your social media and your little TikTok pages acting as if you got a $5,000 check, $5,000. Wire to your account as usual, $5,000. Any of you guys who know 12 Monkeys will know what I'm doing there. Anyway, $5,000 check. A $5,000 check given to you. I'm sorry. This goes through and this actually works. You could bitch all day about Trump and Musk. I guarantee you'll shut your mouth when you get that $5,000 check. And I'll tell you what. If you're that anti-Trump and you're that anti-Musk, don't take the $5,000 check. Give it back. Send it back with an FU written on it and say, I don't want it because I'm anti-Trump. I don't believe in Trump and Musk. Go ahead. I dare you. You liars. You lie. I guarantee you'll want that $5,000 check. And there are people who are saying, well, maybe we shouldn't use a $5,000 check to give to taxpayers. We should not give a refund to taxpayers. We should use it to pay down the debt. I got news for you. I'm sorry. Most Americans, if you gave them the option of saying, hand me a $5,000 check or pay down the national debt for the United States, that will help us in the long run. It'll help my kids in the long run. Bullshit. Most people are going to take a $5,000 check. Let's keep it real. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Let me know if you're excited about it. Do you think it's BS? Do you think it's going to work? It's not going to work. Where do you think the money should go? It makes common sense as far as I'm concerned. It just makes sense. Let me know in the comments below. Like this video on the way out. I truly appreciate that. Subscribe if you've not subscribed. And I will see you on the next Time to Talk podcast. Peace.